everyone! Today we will have a new lesson about the www or World Wide Web. English scientist Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1989. The World Wide Web or WWW, commonly known as the web, is an information system where documents and other web resources are identified by uniform resource locators or URL, such as https sample.com, which may be interlinked by hypertext and are accessible over the internet. The resources of the web are transferred via the Hypertext Transfer Protocol or HTTP, may be accessed by users by a software application called a web browser, and are published by a software application called a web server. Web resources may be any type of downloaded media, but web pages are hypertext for documents formatted in hypertext markup language or HTML. Multiple web resources with a common theme and usually a common domain name make up a website. Websites are also stored in computers that are running a web server, which is a program that responds to requests made over the internet from web browsers running on a user's computer. Let's talk about the functions. The Internet is a global system of interconnected computer networks. The World Wide Web is a global collection of documents and other resources linked by hyperlinks and URLs. Web resources are accessed using HTTP or HTTPS, which are application-level Internet protocols that use the Internet's transport protocols. Viewing a web page on the World Wide Web normally begins either by typing the URL of the page into a web browser or by following a hyperlink to that page or resource. The web browser then initiates a series of background communication messages to fetch and display the requested page. Let's proceed to Hypertext Markup Language or HTML. Hypertext Markup Language or HTML is the standard markup language for creating web pages and web applications. With cascading style sheets or CSS and JavaScript, it forms a triad of cornerstone technologies for the World Wide Web. Web browsers receive HTML documents from a web server or from local storage and render the documents into multimedia web pages. HTML describes the structure of a web page semantically and originally included cues for the appearance of the document. HTML can embed programs written in a scripting language such as JavaScript, which affects the behavior and content of web pages. Inclusion of CSS defines the look and layout of content. The World Wide Web Consortium or W3C, maintainer of both the HTML and the CSS standards, has encouraged the use of CSS over explicit presentational HTML since 1997. Let's proceed to the linking. Most web pages contain hyperlinks to other related pages and perhaps to downloadable files, source documents, definitions, and other web. In the underlying HTML, a hyperlink looks like this. Such a collection of useful, related resources interconnected via hypertext link is dubbed as web information. Publication on the Internet created what Tim Berners-Lee first called the World Wide Web in its original camel case, which was subsequently discarded in November 1990. The hyperlink structure of the web is described by the web graph. The nodes of the web graph correspond to the web pages or URL, the directed edges between them to the hyperlinks. Let's talk about www prefix. Many host names used for the World Wide Web begin with the www because of the long-standing practice of naming Internet hosts according to the services they provide. The host name of a web server is often www in the same way that it may be FTP for an FTP server and news or NNTP for a Usenet news server. These host names appear as domain name system or DNS or subdomain names as in www.example.com. Tim Berners-Lee's web space states that World Wide Web is officially spelled as three separate words, each capitalized with no intervening hyphens. Use of the www prefix has been declining, especially when Web 2.0 web applications sought to brand their domain names and make them easily pronounceable. As the mobile web grew in popularity, services like gmail.com, outlook.com, myspace.com, facebook.com, and twitter.com are most often mentioned without adding www or indeed.com to the domain. Let's discuss scheme specifiers. HTTP or HTTPS at the start of a web URL, hypertext transfer protocol, or HTTP secure respectively. They specify the communication protocol to use for the request and response. The HTTP protocol is fundamental to the operation of the World Wide Web. And the added encryption layer in HTTPS is essential when browsers send or retrieve confidential data such as passwords or banking information. Pages. A web page, also written as web page, is a document that is suitable for the World Wide Web and web browsers. A web browser displays a web page on a monitor or mobile device. The term web page usually refers to what is visible, but may also refer to the contents of the computer file itself, which is usually a text file containing hypertext written in HTML or a comparable markup language. Typical web pages provide hypertext for browsing to other web pages via hyperlinks, often referred to as links. Web browsers will frequently have to access multiple web resource elements such as reading style sheets, scripts, and images while presenting each web page. On a network, a web browser can retrieve a web page from a remote web server. The web server may restrict access to a private network, such as corporate intranet. The web browser uses the Hypertext Transfer Protocol or HTTP to make such requests to the web server. A static web page is delivered exactly as stored as web content in the web server's file system. In contrast, a dynamic web page is generated by a web application, usually driven by server-side software. Dynamic web pages are used when each user may require completely different information, for example, bank websites, web email, and so on. Next is static page or stationary page is a web page that is delivered to the user exactly as stored. in contrast to the dynamic web pages which are generated by a web application. A static web page displays the same information for all users from all contexts subject to modern capabilities of a web server to negotiate content type or language of the document where such versions are available and the server is configured to do so. Dynamic pages. A server-side dynamic web page is a web page whose construction is controlled by an application server processing server-side scripts. In server-side scripting, parameters determine how the assembly of every new web page proceeds, including the setting up of more client-side processing. A client-side dynamic web page processes the web page using HTML scripting running in the browser as it loads. JavaScript and other scripting languages determine the way the HTML in the received page is parsed into the Document Object Model or DOM that represents the loaded web page. The same client-side techniques can then dynamically update or change the DOM in the same way. The HTML is the umbrella term for technologies and methods used to create web pages that are not static web pages, though it has fallen out of common use since the popularization of AJAX, a term which is now itself rarely used. Client-side scripting, server-side scripting, or a combination of these make for the dynamic web experience in a browser. Website. A website is a collection of related web resources including web pages, multimedia content, typically identified with a common domain name, and published on at least one web server. Notable examples are Wikipedia.org, Google.com, and Amazon.com. A website may be accessible via public Internet Protocol or IP network, such as the Internet, or a private local area network or LAN. By referencing a uniform resource locator or URL that identifies the site. Websites can have many functions and can be used in various fashions. A website can be a personal website, a corporate website for a company, a government website, an organization website, and so on. Websites are typically dedicated to a particular topic or purpose, ranging from entertainment and social networking to providing news and education. All publicly accessible websites collectively constitute the World Wide Web, while private websites, such as a company's website for its employees, are typically a part of an intranet. End users can access websites on a range of devices, including desktop and laptop computers, tablet computers, smartphones, and smart TVs. Some websites require using registration or subscription to access content. Examples of subscription websites include many business sites, news websites, academic journal websites, gaming websites, message boards, web-based email, social networking websites, websites providing real-time stock market data, as well as sites providing various other services. Next, browser. A web browser, commonly referred to as a browser, is a software's user agent for accessing information on the World Wide Web. To connect to a website server and display its pages, a user needs to have a web browser program. This is the program that the user runs to download. format, and display a web page on the user's computer. In addition to allowing users to find, displaying and moving between web pages, a web browser will usually have features like keeping bookmarks, recording history, managing cookies and home pages, and may have facilities for recording passwords for logging into websites. The most popular browsers are Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer, and Edge. Let's proceed to server. A web server is a server software or hardware dedicated to running said software that can satisfy the World Wide Web client requests. A web server can, in general, contain one or more websites. A web server processes incoming network requests over HTTP and several other related protocols. The primary function of a web server is to store, process, and deliver web pages to clients. The communication between client and server takes place using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol or HTTP. Pages delivered are most frequently HTML documents, which may include images, style sheets, and scripts in addition to the text content. A user agent, commonly a web browser or web crawler, initiates communication by making a request for a specific resource using HTTP, and the server responds with the content of that resource or an error message if unable to do so. The resource is typically a real file on the server's secondary storage. But this is not necessarily the case and depends on how the web server is implemented. Web servers can also frequently be found embedded in devices such as printers, routers, webcams, and serving only a local network. The web server may then be used as a part of a system for monitoring or administering the device in question. This usually means that no additional software and computers since only a web browser is required. Let, 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 let's talk about cookie. An HTTP cookie, also called web cookie, internet cookie, browser cookie, or simply cookie, is a small piece of data sent from a website and stored on the user's computer by the user's web browser while the user is browsing. Cookies were designed to be a reliable mechanism for websites to remember stateful information such as items added into shopping online store, or to record the user's browsing activity, including clicking particular buttons, logging in, or recording which pages were visited in the past. They can also be used to remember arbitrary pieces of information that the user previously entered into form fields such as names, addresses, passwords, and credit card numbers. Tracking cookies, and especially third-party tracking cookies, are commonly used as ways to compile long-term records of individuals' browsing histories, a potential privacy concern that prompted European and US lawmakers to take action in 2011. Google Project Zero researcher John Horn describes ways cookies can be read by intermediaries like Wi-Fi hotspots providers. He recommends to use the browser in incognito mode in such circumstances. How about search engine? A web search engine or internet search engine is a software system that is designed to carry out web search internet search, which means to serve the World Wide Web in a systematic way for particular information specified in a web search query. The search results are generally presented in a line of results, often referred to as search engine results pages or SERP. The information may be a mix of web pages, images, videos, infographics, articles, research papers, and other types of files. Some search engines also mine data available in databases or open directories. Unlike web directories, which are maintained only by human editors, search engines also maintain real-time information by running an algorithm on a web crawler. Internet content that is not capable of being searched by a web search engine is generally described as the deep web. Let's talk about deep web. The deep web, invisible web, or hidden web are parts of the World Wide Web whose contents are termed to the deep web is the surface web, which is accessible to anyone using the internet. Computer scientist Michael K. Bergman is credited with coining the term deep web in 2001 as a search indexing term. The content of the deep web is hidden behind HTTP forms and includes many very common uses such as webmail, online banking, and services that users must pay for, and which is protected by a paywall such as video on demand, some online magazines, and newspapers, among others. The content of the deep web can be located and accessed by a direct URL or IP address and may require password or other security access past the public website page. Caching. The web cache is a server computer located either on the public internet or within an enterprise that stores recently accessed web pages to improve response time for users when the same content is requested within a certain time after the original request. Most web browsers also implement a web browser cache by writing recently obtained data to a local data storage device. Web pages and resources may contain expiration information to control caching to secure sensitive data such as in online banking or to facilitate frequently updated sites such as news media. Enterprise firewalls often cache web resources requested by one user for the benefit of many users. Some search engines store cache content of frequently accessed websites. So that's all for the discussion about. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.